The NFL season is getting very close, and it's time to highlight my predictions for this season. What's going on, guys? Matt here, back again with another video. Now, I do know my YouTube channel is based around sports cards, but you can use my predictions to make some choices on who you collect this season. Now, if we go to last year, I was able to make the fortunate prediction of picking the Rams to win the Super Bowl.
I'm going to go Rams. So I really do love the Rams.
But in saying so, I was the complete opposite with the Cincinnati Bengals, who was also in the Super Bowl, and I actually thought that Joe Burrow was going to flop. Now, I'm not an expert on the NFL, but I've picked up the sport over the last 5 to 6 years, and it's almost become my favorite sport after the AFL. I'm going to highlight my rankings in each division, go through who I think is going to win each conference, my Super Bowl picks, and then also make a couple of predictions at the end of the video. So let's get started with the AFC East, and the Buffalo Bills are the strong favorites to win the Super Bowl, and I have them on top. After the Bills, I do have the Dolphins, then I do have the Patriots, and lastly, I do have the Jets as well. As I was saying, the Bills are the favorites to win the Super Bowl, but I do think their roster's a little bit overrated, but they still should win the division. The Dolphins do look like a strong team with the addition of Mike McDaniel as their new head coach, as well as Tyreek Hill from the Kansas City Chiefs. This also could be a do-or-die season for their young quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa. I think it does look obvious that the New England Patriots will drop back, but you also have to keep in mind the strong coaching record of their coach, Bill Belichick. And as much as I want my boy Zach Wilson to make it, I just can't really see it with the Jets, but really he does look well suited compared to last season because he does have a better setup around him. Moving on to the AFC North, which is another great division, and I've gone the Bengals first, Baltimore Ravens second, Pittsburgh Steelers third, and the Cleveland Browns fourth. So the Bengals last season overachieved by making the Super Bowl, and a lot of people are expecting a little bit of a hangover, but I am still expecting them to have a strong regular season. They did beef up their offensive line, which was a massive issue for them last season, giving up a lot of sacks to their young quarterback Joe Burrow. Moving on to the Baltimore Ravens, who were the most injury-ravaged team last season, and personally, I'm not a massive fan of Lamar Jackson. I know a lot of people are going to debate that, but for me, I prioritize throwing a little bit more than running as a quarterback, and I think that's why I have Burrow a little bit above Lamar. I do have the Pittsburgh Steelers having the edge over the Cleveland Browns, even though they did have a lot of departures. My reasoning for this is their coach, Mike Tomlin, has one of the best coaching win percentages in history. And you've also got to remember with the Browns, even though they've got a really nice team, Deshaun Watson, unfortunately, is suspended for most of the season, so they do have Jacoby Brissett as their main quarterback. Moving on to my division for the team that I do go for, let's go through the AFC South. So for this one, I feel like I've gone with a lot of people. I've gone the Colts first, the Titans second, the Jaguars third, and my team, the Texans, fourth. So firstly for the Colts, I do like the move of Matt Ryan, who came from the Atlanta Falcons down to the Colts. You've got to remember that the Colts were very close to the playoffs last season, but they did choke that game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I do have the Titans dropping back a little bit because of their quarterback, Ryan Tannehill, but you also have to remember that Mike Vrabel is their coach, and he's been shown to be one of the best coaches in the league right now. The Jaguars had a roller coaster of a season last year with their coach Urban Meyer, and I feel like they will have a little bit of a bounce back but not make the playoffs. Their second year quarterback Trevor Lawrence had one of the craziest rookie seasons with Urban Meyer at the helm, and I feel like he'll have a little bit of a bounce back this season. My team, the Houston Texans, I do think they'll come last in the division, but I also don't think they're going to be the worst team in the NFL, which they are the odds-on favorite to do. And I will highlight later in the video who I think will have the worst record in the league. Moving on to the hardest and most exciting division in the NFL, the AFC West. I've gone the Chargers, the Chiefs, then the Raiders, then the Broncos. Now this Chargers team is ridiculously stacked. They've added Von Miller as well as JC Jackson, and I can see them having a very strong regular season, but that doesn't mean it's going to translate into the playoffs. The Kansas City Chiefs are still good, and I feel like people are overrating this loss of Tyreek Hill a little bit. You got to remember that Patrick Mahomes is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, if not the best, and he just needs time, and behind one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, I think he's going to find his receiver quite easily. Raiders are still a very solid team, even though they're third in this division. They're fresh from the Mike Mayock and John Gruden era. Their quarterback, Derek Carr, causes a lot of divide around the league in terms of what people think of him, but I really like him. I do have the Denver Broncos last, and they're very unlucky to be in this position because they still have a great team with Russell Wilson at the helm. Again, like Derek Carr, I feel like a lot of people are undervaluing Russ, and he was on the verge of an MVP season a couple seasons ago, so I feel like he can replicate that quite easily. This division could honestly flip top to bottom, and you wouldn't be surprised. It's just the hardest division to predict right now in the NFL. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. All right, let's switch conferences down to the NFC and go through the NFC East, and I've gone the Eagles, the Commanders, then the Cowboys, and then the Giants. So this is a very weak division, and I do have the Eagles first. I don't really rate Jalen Hurts as high, and I've seen some other people saying that the Eagles are going to take out the NFC, but I personally don't agree with that. Like I sort of alluded to before with Lamar Jackson, I really do prioritize a good arm over anything else, and that's why I do have Jalen Hurts a little bit lower. Now, I do have the Commanders second, and I feel like a lot of people are going to be surprised by that, but I do think they're going to bounce back from last season because they did have a lot of injuries. The defense is really good because they had Chase Young and Montez Sweat, who was out injured last season, and I know a lot of people don't like Carson Wentz, but I still feel like he's a solid quarterback, and it's the Commanders' best quarterback that they've had since Kirk Cousins. I think the Cowboys will drop from last season, and I think they need a new head coach other than Mike McCarthy. And really, the Giants, I don't really need to talk about the Giants. NFC North, so I've gone with a couple big calls here. I've gone with the Vikings first, the Green Bay Packers second, the Detroit Lions third, and then the Chicago Bears fourth. So in having the Vikings number one, I am backing in their quarterback, Kirk Cousins, with their new head coach, who was the former Rams coordinator, Kevin O'Connell. It seems like their old head coach, Mike Zimmer, was holding them back a fair ton. So I had the Packers coming in second, and my reasoning for that is I have a little bit less faith in them with their star receiver, Devontae Adams, gone. But this is a scenario that you've got to remember. They've got one of the best players in the NFL in their MVP quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, behind them. So really, anything can happen with them. I feel like everyone's kind of predicting the Lions to slump this season, but I think they'll do a little bit better compared to last season. And I personally believe the Chicago Bears are a little bit of a mess, but we'll highlight a bit more of that later. Let's go through the NFC South, and I've got the Buccaneers coming first, the Saints coming second, the Panthers coming third, and then the Falcons coming fourth. So even though I do have the Buccaneers coming first, I can definitely see them dropping because of the off-field stuff with Tom Brady currently going on. There's been talks of his wife not currently staying at his house anymore, and who's to really stop Tom Brady from retiring if he wants to maintain his relationship with his family? Now, the New Orleans Saints are actually a decent team, and I know they lost their head coach Sean Payton as well as Drew Brees a couple of seasons ago, and a lot of people are underrating him, but they still have one of the best defenses in the league. But really, this depends on how much you trust their quarterback, Jameis Winston, but I could easily see him overtaking the Bucs this season, or also coming in that second or third position. Moving on to the Panthers, it is a do it or die season for their coach, Matt Rule. I'm also very excited for their new quarterback, Baker Mayfield, as he tries to prove his haters wrong again. Let's move to our last division in the NFC West, and I've gone the 49ers first, the Rams second, the Cardinals third, and the Seahawks fourth. Now, I do like the 49ers this season compared to the Rams. They always seem to have their number during the regular season games. A lot of people are backing the Rams to go back to back, but you've also got to remember that they've lost Odell Beckham Jr., Von Miller, and Andrew Whitworth. I think people forget that Odell and Von Miller were crucial to the Rams even making the Super Bowl last season, and it's a very dicey situation at the Arizona Cardinals with their receiver DeAndre Hopkins being suspended for part of the season, as well as it being a potential do or die season for their coach, Cliff Kingsbury. Now, going on to the conference winners, I do have the Chiefs taking out the AFC, and I know that's in contrast to what I was saying in them finishing under the Chargers, but I think they'll have a little bit more experience in the playoffs compared to the Chargers. For the NFC, I do have a little bit of a shocker here, and I am going with the 49ers. I'm going to explain why in my next part. So obviously in the Super Bowl, we do have the 49ers and the Chiefs playing off, and I do have the San Francisco 49ers taking out the Super Bowl. So my reasoning for the 49ers taking out the Super Bowl is as follows. Last season, the 49ers were one win away from making the Super Bowl game with a pretty mediocre quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo behind them. There's a lot gambling on their young quarterback Trey Lance, but I do believe in their coach Kyle Shanahan in making the best use of Lance's abilities. You've got to remember that Lance is a little bit more mobile than their old quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo, so I feel like the playbook is going to open up a little bit more for Kyle Shanahan. And Shanahan has had really great success with previous quarterbacks all having career best seasons under him. Some examples include Robert Griffin, Matt Ryan, as well as Jimmy Garoppolo as well. I do have some question marks with Jimmy G potentially disrupting team culture because it's obvious the 49ers don't want him to be there, and really him just lingering around just leaves a bad smell. Looking at the 49ers roster from top to bottom, they have one of the best teams and have elite players at almost every position. You can rattle off names like Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, Deebo Samuel, Brendan Ayuk, Trent Williams, and I guess the list goes on, and I feel like their team is going to be quite strong this year. And I don't need Trey Lance to be that superstar quarterback, but really just be a little bit better than Jimmy Garoppolo, and they could potentially win the Super Bowl. So I'm going to highlight a couple more predictions that I do have for this season. So as I said before, with worst record, a lot of people have favored the Houston Texans because they are the odds-on favorite. But for me personally, I think the Chicago Bears are going to have the worst record. This season, they do have a new coach, and they also lost star defensive end Khalil Mack. And looking at their roster, they potentially have the worst receivers and offensive lines in the league, and that doesn't bode well for their second-year quarterback, Justin Fields, who is pretty much just going through growing pains. And lastly, my prediction for the MVP, it's quite an obvious one, and I'm going to go with Josh Allen from the Buffalo Bills. So this is an easy pick for me because I always feel like the MVP is a narrative and media-driven award. So look for first-time winners, and examples include Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, and Russell Wilson. The Bills are the overwhelming Super Bowl favorites, so if they do get close to win the Super Bowl, you've got to imagine that Josh Allen is a massive part of that. The roster is slightly overrated for me, but I feel like Josh Allen is just going to elevate the play of the rest of his teammates. Those are my predictions just before the NFL season. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of my predictions and any massive predictions that you'll be making. If you enjoyed the content, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button down below. And yeah, I'll see you guys all in future videos. Take care.